Well, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I am so excited to have this live stream and to be frank with all of you. It's been in the work for a while, and unfortunately, many factors got in the way, but I'm thankful that finally myself and our dear brother here, Lloyd Jongh, are able to connect with all of you via this live stream. Now, if you don't know anything about Lloyd Jongh, you're obviously living under a rock because he has been doing a lot of work on Sharia law, and he has his own channel, and he's been working with others like myself, Brother Mill, Dr. J. Smith, just to name a few. And I'll ask him, of course, to give us a little bit of a background related to this issue. But today's topic, it's almost like a summation of a video series that I've done with him. And we haven't finished that series yet. We'll be adding more videos related to Islamic Sharia law. And what I enjoy about working with Lloyd is that he won't only share with you, but he'll provide you with references, screenshots, and I will go ahead and put a link for you in the description to that video series, because under every video, there are specific online resources and even other resources as well that will back up the material and the information that was shared. And that's, as you know, folks, that's important because we don't want our Muslim friends to think that we are exaggerating anything, we are fabricating anything, but you'll be surprised how many of them probably will also be shocked to discover any of this information because maybe they weren't even aware of it. Having said so, I want to welcome our dear brother Lloyd, and hopefully everyone will enjoy this live stream. But please, please, please make every attempt possible to ask questions related to what is being shared. And I speak to our moderators as well. If you see any questions, please highlight them for us so that we are able to spot them right away. Lloyd, thank you again for being here, brother.
Well, thank you, Al Fadi, for having me on. It's a great pleasure and a great honor.
Please give people just your just 2 minute background and the channel that they can go and watch many of your work, and then I'll have a couple more questions after that.
Right. My channel is the same as my name, Lloyd de Jong. For those who are unsure how my surname is, it's de Jong, originally a Dutch surname. And I focus largely on Islamic law, which is what is called the Sharia and the fiqh. This is what is used in Islamic courts. This is how Islamic countries would run in the future and how they were run in the past according to this legal and political system. And I highlight the actual books that the scholars of Islam, Muslims always say, have you consulted a scholar? So I highlight the actual books that the scholars of Islam will study when they go to university to become a lawyer, to become a judge, to become a senior imam. They have to learn these texts of the four schools of jurisprudence, the four madhabs, or the schools of fiqh. And I show these books to everyone, and these books are the final understanding and application of the content of the Quran, the Hadiths, and the Tafsir and other sources. So this is the final understanding by the greatest minds in Islam. They are similar to the Talmud in that the Muslims designed a legal and political framework similar to what is in the Talmud to compete with the Talmud. And they then obviously, so just like the Talmud for the Jews is a place for the rabbinical Jews, is where they explain the Torah. This is where Muslims then explain and fully exegete all of the previous sources, and where the doctrine is found, not just a verse, but actual doctrine, pages and pages and dozens of pages of detailed doctrine explaining the aspect, everything you see in those sources and how they are to be applied and understood by the greatest scholars of Islam.
Yep, that's wonderful. And just a quick question, and I know I asked this in the past. What drew you, drew your attention or interest into the topic of Sharia, for instance, out of all other topics? It's a very technical topic. It's a very complex topic, and I love the way you try to simplify it for the viewers.
No, thank you. That's a really good question. I lived in the Middle East for nearly 11 years. I worked for a large amount of that time in security, national security. I was doing work at government level. And as an advisor, I traveled extensively across the Middle East. I became very curious about the culture, about the things I was seeing, about the behavior, and also the dysfunction. I had relationships with various people as well. And for instance, when I was involved with some of the girls, there were so many people that were living double lives, literally living double lives, and they were terrified of being discovered, terrified of the alternate lifestyle that they were living, being discovered in, and they were quite literally afraid of being killed. And I wanted to understand this. Then I studied counterterrorism. I did an online course in counterterrorism through University Leiden in Holland, and I discovered there that the faculty were terrified of discussing Islamic terrorism, and they shut down any such discussion. And then, of course, with ISIS in Raqqa and so on, and those that, with that, when Raqqa fell, the training center where they were teaching all of these ISIS troops, that books for a short period, I had access to the actual training center, to all the books, and I downloaded them and started reading them, and I realized it was Orthodox Sunni Islam, but it was a side of Islam that we never see outside of the Quran and the Hadiths. And I realized that the Imams have access to this. This is the knowledge of the Imams, of the most highly trained people within Islam, which is usually secret or hidden from the lay Muslims and from non-Muslims like us. And this allowed me to finally understand the motivations and the actions, because it explained in detail all of these questions that I'd had.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I want to just emphasize to people what Lloyd is saying is that oftentimes many Muslims, when he mentioned double life, what does that mean? Well, example, they left Islam, but they don't want to discuss that publicly. Maybe they drink alcohol. They don't want to show that. Maybe they live really a different sexual life that they don't want to be exposed to that. And the list can go on and on and on, because they understand that under Sharia law, they could be punished, and even punished by death if necessary. But not all Muslims really know how to interpret anything from a technical standpoint. That's why they always say, let's ask the imam, or I'm going to go and ask the clerk. Or sometimes there's a website called Islam Q&A. They go and ask people who are scholars over there to explain to them certain things. Now, even the scholar will say, oh, there are different opinions about this, or Allah knows best, and all that kind of stuff. So you'll see how Lloyd is going to now give us some examples of things like this. But it's very important for us also to keep in mind that this is yet another evidence that Islam, when it boils down to it, is a man-made religion, because it's based on interpretation of mere men, just like you and me. Granted, they are scholars in their field. Granted, they studied. Granted, they have degrees. So no one is questioning that. But at the end of the day, they are doing their best to try to interpret certain things based on traditional views sometimes, or other evidence, or they would use different ways, like an analogy, for instance, to try to draw a judgment or a conclusion. But I don't want to jump ahead of the curve here. I want to turn it over to you, Lloyd. And if you want to share anything, by all means, just let me know, prompt me, and I'll make sure that we project those slides if you want, of course. And maybe we'll start with just a simple question. Tell people, what is the word Sharia in the first place?
So one of the best places to look for answers would be, for instance, the Encyclopedia of Islam, which is the gold standard academic source for all things Islam, which is written by both non-Muslim and Muslim scholars. So a set of the Encyclopedia of Islam, typically it's about 13 or 14 volumes. It's been written for well over a century now. And a set of these books would cost you about $40,000 to buy. And there's about $1,500 per year maintenance fee, or you can rent it for about $5,000 a year. So I was lucky to receive a copy of this, and I make all of my sources available. And Sharia technically means we have covered this in the videos, but Sharia technically means a road, a way. But in a literal sense, a road, a path to somewhere. So it's a path, a way to somewhere, but also it's in an allegorical form, it's a way to perfection. It's like, from when you look at, say, socialism is the way to communism, the final state, this perfection. So this is the way to the Islamic paradise, to the perfect state. Really, that's what they mean in terms of the sense of the meaning. So the Sharia also encompasses everything that is the Sharia. If you want to be explicit, it is the revealed knowledge, or the revealed words of Allah and Muhammad. It is what they've said explicitly, or what is very clear from what they've said. The fiqh, which goes along with the Sharia, and often the terms are interchangeable. The fiqh is the human understanding and the human application of what is the Sharia. So technically what is in the Quran is Sharia, but the Quran is very incomplete. It lacks a lot of detail. So humans have had to take this and then apply it to an entire society, an entire civilization, build an entire legal and political system out of it. And one last thing, you mentioned when they said Allah knows best. For instance, just like within Christianity, we have the Nicene Creed. Within Islam, there is the Aqidah. And one of the tenets of the Aqidah is Allah knows best. When we are unsure, when we are unclear about something, Allah knows best. So this is actually something that is part of the equivalent of the Nicene Creed within Islam, the Aqidah. They have the statement. So this is an article of faith within Islam to say this.
Exactly, and that's where we get the word, like you said, way, shir'ah. In other words, it kind of leads you to somewhere. And obviously, in the mind of the Islamic scholars, they want you to follow the path, the way to, like you stated, to paradise, to enter into heaven. And obviously, there are sources that will support all of that. I'm sure you got to talk about that, but the Quran and the Hadith are among those as well. So go ahead, brother.
Yeah. So, have there been any critical questions that have arisen or thoughts that you've had regarding
Well, we have a
series that we did?
question. Yeah, I mean, not necessarily maybe from me at the moment, but we have a question from someone. I can project it right now. You can always say if you have an answer for it immediately, or we can talk about it. Like, for instance, this is the question right here. Someone is saying, what is the description of Allah according to Sharia, and how does it present him? Obviously, the questioner is talking about something that Muslims struggle to tell you. Is Allah a name? Is that a pronoun? Is that a proper name, I should say? Is that a description of a God? Like, is it the God or something to that extent? But also, aside of from the Quran and the Hadith, how can you describe who Allah is in general?
Okay, well, let me share my screen. Let's go to a source so we can start looking at some of this. Let me just get that ready. So, I'm going to share my second screen here. Okay, that should be up in a moment. So this is the Encyclopedia of Islam, which is very, very helpful reference. So this is Allah, God, the unique one, the creator. Already to the pre-Islamic Arabs, Allah was one of the Meccan deities, possibly the supreme deity. Now, notice the admission is here. So you can find more in volume 1, page 406a, which is the left-hand column. So notice already Allah was known prior to the advent of Muhammad.
Mhm.
Allah was the supreme deity of the Arabian pagan pantheon. So it should be noted that the Allah of the Kaaba at the time of Muhammad's birth was Hubal, which is a prefix, and Baal, he who is Baal. And the God of the Kaaba, the Allah of the Kaaba, had multiple names, and one of those names also was Makkah or Al Makkah. And of course, we know of the city Makkah in Arabia. So this was the pagan moon god. Quite literally, this was so. And Muhammad, when he was younger in the Sirah, he was consecrated to Hubal. So, and of course, we know also from the various sources, including the Sirah, that Muhammad and his wife Khadija would pray, and they had statues in their house of Alat, Manat, and Al Uzza. And in fact, supposedly he had two children from Khadija, and one of them was named Abd al Uzza, which means the slave of Al Uzza. So he named one of his children. It should be said that Allah is really, while it's now what's called a theonym, the name of God, a pronoun for, well, the name of God, but Allah is really just the God. The Christians use it as the God. So any God could be the God. It's just a general descriptive term. Whereas the Christian God is of course Yahweh. Whereas, so the Allah, Yahweh, would be for the Christians, whereas for the Muslims, Allah is the name of the God. But it should also be said that now Allah supposedly has many names. No, that is not true. Allah has one name, but it's a secret name which we do not know. Allah has, they say, has 99 names, but no, Allah has 99 character traits, qualities. There are 99 descriptions of Allah. So the truthful, the just, the mighty, and so on, the wise. Those are descriptions, those are not names. Allah has a secret name, which we do not have access to. The major scholars apparently know this name, but we don't. And this is highly reminiscent also of the Gnostics, who believed that if you knew the name of the eons of the gods, you could then call upon them to do you favors, to do things for you. So there's this odd remnant here from the past.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for sharing this. Please continue, and we can, of course, every now and then we'll ask a question.
Okay, yeah. So are there any questions perhaps within the comments here? Has any question come up? If you can tag me
Not
as
yet.
well.
Somebody's just asking you when you're going to write a book, so you can always address this.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah. So a couple of sources I would recommend for people to learn and to use is this one, The Reliance of the Traveler. This is the most popular Islamic law manual in the world. This is very, very common. It's The Reliance of the Traveler and the Tools of the Worshipper. So this was written for the lay Muslim in to use when they are, unable to, so they can consult this and use this as a tool to help them in their worship. And this teaches a number of things like how to pray and so on. There's a lot of interesting detail given here. Then, of course, I use the Encyclopedia of Islam. This is volume 13, the index, which then tells you where to go to find more detailed information. Then, on that, also, this is the Hidayah, Commentary on the Islamic Law. This is the most detailed of the Islamic law manuals. This is Hanafi fiqh, right? So, Commentary on the Muslim laws. This translation goes back to 1795, I believe. So, this was translated. This is the major fiqh manual of the Hanafi school. This is the jewel in their crown, as it were. And this one is over 2,600 pages. So if you want to find things, you'll find a great deal here. So between the Hidayah and the Reliance, there's a huge amount to be discovered. And yeah, so also there was something you mentioned that you spoke of differences between schools. The differences between schools are very, in a real sense, cosmetic. It's one religion. So the differences are often just of a superficial nature. Like when you hold your hands up to pray, do you hold them up high? Do you hold them down low? Those things do not those things do not affect doctrine. They do not affect the major fundamental bases of Islamic beliefs. So there is more similarity than differences, and difference was harmonized by um, by a scholar who. So the idea of difference is called ikhtilaf, right? This is the term for the doctrine called ikhtilaf, and this was harmonized. And what you have is that there is now considered a range of behaviors that are suitable, that all earn reward from Allah, from the very strict, called azima, to the very relaxed, to where you could also, in fact, do the opposite, essentially violate Sharia law, called rukhsa, which is a relaxation. What is the correct Islamic translation of rukhsa, Al-Fari?
You mean like the Arabic word for
The
that?
Arabic, yeah, the translation
It's
of
like
rukhsa.
permission, for instance.
Okay.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, then you are allowed to, and of course, Islamic law, while it can be very strict, also allows for any and every rule to be broken. And there are rules for when and how the laws can be broken, and every single Islamic law can be broken because it doesn't see itself as a system of right and wrong that is rigid and shall we say permanent. What you have is a set of rules of legal and illegal, and what is illegal can be made legal, as we've discussed within the shows.
And if I may add, in addition to what you just mentioned, this excellent point. I'm sure you're aware of this. Something called al-darurat tubih al-mahdhurat, meaning necessities sometimes give permission to things that were prohibited. Like, for instance, you are in a desert, you are stranded, you can eat a dead animal meat, even though you're not supposed to do that. So that's an example because you want to survive now, but that's just a simple example. There are other things that you can do that are permissible, provided the conditions and the environment allows you to break the rules that are standard, the norms, in order for you to do that.
Correct. In fact, there are six major pillars of the Sharia. These are two of them that I have on the screen now. This slide is called the pillars of Sharia, and all is permitted. Now, there are two major pillars that are relevant here, and you've just mentioned one of them. So, Islamic law, as I said, these six pillars, and the first one is aims are more important than the means. The aims are more important. Al-maqasid aqadu min al-wasa'il. I hope I pronounced that well. So, in other words, the ends justify the means. So any means is fine towards the end, which means you can do whatever you need to if it benefits Islam. This is one of the foundation pillars of the Sharia, which I think would go against the Christian doctrine. that, I mean, so this is literally anything, all is permitted, everything is permitted. Then, of course, number 4, which you've just mentioned, this actually has a technical name, al-darurat tubih al-masghurat, which is necessities permit the forbidden. So if you feel, and that's a very subjective feel, if you feel that something is oppressing you, again, a very loose definition, you may do the forbidden. This is perfectly legal and it's allowed if you say that, well, I thought it would be of benefit, or I thought I was being quote unquote oppressed.
Wonderful. Again, everyone, you're joining us here on a special live stream with our dear brother Lloyd de Jongh. And really, in my humble view, he is becoming an expert and a go-to scholar when it comes to simplifying the understanding of Islamic Sharia law. He's done a number of shows on this with me and others, and even his own channel. But as you are seeing here, he backs up any of the things that we talk about or he addresses from Islamic sources, and oftentimes from really sources that I doubt even normal, everyday Muslim have access to them, or even knew that they even existed. So the point we're trying to make here is that we want to help our Muslim friends realize that there are teachings in their own Sharia, basically, depending on the school, obviously, how the interpretation might go, that backs up a number of things that take place, for instance, by ISIS, by Al Qaeda, by others, or even in country laws. Why do they force women to do this, or why do they force us to do that? There is always a backup for this, and you will find this under Sharia interpretation. I want to welcome also our moderators, Sister Mariana, thank you for joining us, and also Protestant Believer and others. Please make sure you highlight any questions you might see that worth discussing, because our guest here will basically, with an open heart, will be willing to share his knowledge to address these questions. Continue on, brother.
No, I'd like to maybe go a little slower so that we can give people a chance to really absorb this, because many people say that I throw so much information at them at way too fast a pace. But again, this is Azima and Rukhsa. We've just mentioned that. You can see on the slide here, dispensation, right? Legal dispensation, permission to basically break the law, Rukhsa, right? And then also, of course, notice here, you can take from other schools, you can mix between, you can, in a real sense, mix and match between the legal schools if there's a need. And then, of course, you see azima is legal strictness, right? And rukhsa, permission or dispensation in law, it is a ruling relaxing or suspending by way of exception an injunction of a primary and general nature, right? So, in other words, every law can be relaxed, as they call it, and then its counterpart is azima, right? What is also weird is that azima, there's this mention here of strictness in magic. What is odd is when you read through the Encyclopedia of Islam, it's very weird, but about just a rough figure, but about 40% or so of all of the references in the Encyclopedia of Islam to Islamic terms have a connection to magic or the occult of some type. Magic ritual, some kind of magical ritual. So there's always some kind of occultic magical ritual connected with most of these words, which is really unusual. So as you can see, azima is a fixed purpose in religious law, an ordinance interpreted strictly. So, and in magic, it is an adjuration or the application of a formula of which magical effects are expected. And this is a topic in Islam that I think almost nobody has discussed.
That's wonderful. Before, I don't want to distract you, by the way, but you can address it now or later. Someone basically is saying that one of their Ahmadiyya Muslim followers was killed in a certain country. And you might want to talk about just some of the branches of Islam that could be looked down upon as if they are a heresy or an offshoot of what is permissible as a form of worship, and so on and so forth. So it's up to you whether now or before we close.
Just briefly then, so the 4 schools, the Hanafi, the Maliki, the Shafi, and the Hanbali, those 4 schools, and oddly enough, along with the Jafari school of the Shias, those are considered valid schools of fiqh or madhabs. It's considered that those scholars have done sufficient study and are of sufficient knowledge to formulate laws that are correct. And all other scholars, all other groups are considered to be non-orthodox, and therefore they are violating the laws of the Sharia. They are committing blasphemy, and of course the punishment for blasphemy is death, right? So actually, let me go to that here. So under strict Sharia, they would be killed because this would be violating the law. Whereas right now, we do not have full application of the Sharia. So Muslims have to apply this as fast as they can, as much as they can under their given circumstances. So one fine day, they need to start to apply these laws fully, and they must work towards this fact. You can see here, this is from the Reliance of the Traveler. This is within the Islamic Law Manual. This is the index. Apostasy from Islam is ridda. And notice it says very bluntly, whoever voluntarily leaves Islam is killed, section 08.1. And notice there is no indemnity or expiation for killing an apostate. So in other words, a Muslim or non-Muslim may murder a Muslim apostate, and there is no penalty for doing so. I will actually go to that law, and I will. So let's have a look at that section. So apostasy from Islam, ridda, leaving Islam is the ugliest form of unbelief. It is kufr, and the worst. It may come about through sarcasm. So in other words, it's very easy, apparently, to break the law and to become an apostate, right? Now, when a person who has reached puberty and is sane voluntarily apostatizes from Islam, he deserves to be killed. Now, it should be noted that a Muslim is legally allowed to lie if he feels that there is, again, some kind of concern. So, in which case, as long as within his heart he is true to Islam, but with his mouth he can say what he likes. So that one has to wonder: is someone being sincere? This leaves that question open, but strictly according to the law, when someone apostatizes, he deserves to be killed. So they say, ask him to repent, but if he refuses, he is immediately killed. Now, for instance, the differences between the four schools, like wait 3 days, well, within the Quran, within the sources, really, there is no 3 day dispensation. So that is merely this whole series of degrees from between Azma and Rukhsa. Technically, you should be killed immediately. And there is no indemnity for killing an apostate, since it is killing someone who deserves to die. That is the very simple law of Islam. Now, it might not be implemented yet, but it is something they intend to implement. And ISIS and the Taliban certainly implement these laws.
Wonderful. Another question that might be also applicable in along the same lines that you're talking about: do Sunnis and Shia groups follow the exact same Sharia, or are there different schools? Obviously, I know the answer, but I want our viewers to get educated on that.
Um, so there clearly are differences between Sunni and Shia. However, when you look at Sunnis and Shias, it's not like you look at one group and go, "Are those Buddhists? I can't tell." You immediately see that they are Muslims. While there are differences, there is, on the whole, they tend to have effectively the same set of laws, effectively the same ideas expressed. As I said, the Sunnis actually recognize the Jafari school, right? So at least within, for instance, Azhar University, they recognize the Jafari school. The laws are effectively the same. Now, you can say there are differences, but those differences, are they really as big as we think? Perhaps not. You um, so I'm not sure if that's as detailed an answer, because I haven't really dug into that particular topic, but the difference is not as big as one would think between these groups. Does that answer the question, Al-Fadi?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, because people sometimes think like maybe there is a huge, huge, huge difference. Now, the sources might differ because the Shia will follow certain sources, the Sunnis might follow other sources, but you can judge by the actions taken. It's almost like there is almost similar reactions to apostasy or blasphemy, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, no, exactly. In that sense, they are very much the same. Yes, they
Yeah.
don't differ very much in that respect.
Yeah. Carry on, brother. You can continue with the other things. Every now
Um,
and then, if I see a question that worth mentioning, I'll mention it to you.
okay, yeah. Just in terms of, okay, so we've got this. Now, it should be noted that we never got to the point where we were discussing in detail some of these other issues, the historical development of the Sharia. Right, this is something that is worth discussing in the future as well. But even that is very much in doubt, and this is an area where Jay obviously has done a lot of work within the history. But one should realize that the history of the development of the Sharia itself is, it's not as cut and dried as one would be one would think it is, given the way that Muslims always seem to imply that the story is very clear, that things are very easily understood, but this is not the case. And yeah, I want to go back through. Let me quickly go back through just some of the highlights from the previous show, so I can just roughly touch on things, and then so it should be noted, right, by the audience that, for instance, this is from Foreign Words in the Quran by Arthur Jeffrey, and this is a book that's available. I may have spelled this wrong, so I should probably take the E away there. Yeah. According to him, according to this book, now he was a PhD professor of the Arabic language in Cairo, and he identified something like 55 languages in the Quran. And he identified more than 2,000, this was in 1938, more than 2,000 words from these languages. And amongst those, you've got Syriac, Aramaic, which are essentially one family of languages. You have Hebrew, Greek, and Ethiopic. Ethiopic, you can include Amharic down here. So you've got a huge amount of foreign words, which was borrowed from Syriac. So you've got this northeastern influence. You've got Hebrew, so they took from the Greek and from the Ethiopic. And then you've got Persian, Pahlavi. You have Akkadian, South Arabian, Armenian, Phoenician. And you can see a South Arabian, for instance, they've got 77 words that we know of today. And it's odd that there's so much taken from Ethiopic. You've got about 200 words taken from the Ethiopic, right? That we know of at least. So there was a lot of borrowing. So it's very interesting that they claim it's an Arabic Quran, but it's not really just Arabic. Not if there's over 50 languages represented. Any comment on that? And I'll move on.
Oh no, keep going. But that's interesting.
Okay.
Of course, it shows some of the source words that the Quran borrowed from.
Yeah. Also, it should be noted that the Sharia is a secret. Muslims are not allowed to reveal it because essentially it is treason. It is revealing a weakness within Islam, and this is something they're not allowed to do. Also, unfortunately, lay Muslims are not allowed to know much of this. They might implicitly know it, and they often do, I believe, but this is not something they can discuss. For instance, in the last 3 or 4 years that I've been doing this, I have invited countless Muslims to meet with me simply to read through these Islamic law books and discuss them. They always come in the comments and pretend to have knowledge, and they would say simply, I'm wrong. But I say, fine, if Sharia is beautiful and Islam is beautiful, let us read these works, which are of such great authority from such great authoritative scholars. Let us read these and see what these scholars have to say and what they teach us the about the laws of Islam so that we can appreciate its beauty. I have not had a single Muslim accept, not one, simply to meet, read these, and discuss them. If so, again, this would just confirm that one, they're not allowed to, and two, they are terrified of doing so because if people see this, people would be utterly turned off by the Sharia. They would realize the true nature of Islam. Some sources that I use: the Brill Encyclopedia of Islam, right? The Brill Encyclopedia of the Quran. Look at my videos, or in the description of the videos with Al Fadi, you will find links to all of these. Right? These are major authoritative texts that would be very helpful in understanding Islam. And yeah, so let me continue. Also, it should be noted that Islam abrogates Christianity. Islam has abrogated all religions before it. And of course, they discuss within the Sharia that it is unbelief for a Muslim to hold that the remnant cults bearing the names of formerly valid religions, so these were valid at one time, such as Christianity or Judaism, are acceptable to Allah after He sent the final messenger to the entire world. So they must make the entire world Muslim. This is a matter over which there is no disagreement among Islamic scholars. Now, I I would prefer to just trust the word of these Islamic scholars, at least because this is the common consensus, rather than a random Muslim in the comments section, right? So this is the orthodox view of Islam, and it's I just find it why is it so difficult for Muslims to be honest about the aims and intentions of Islam? Well, because it's adversarial, and if we know about these things, we would be horrified and we would react to it very negatively. And yeah, and then also one of the fundamental things is that Islam teaches that Abraham, Father Abraham for Christians, right, the father of all nations, that he essentially his teaching is to hate Jews and his teaching is to hate Christians. So they mention here that there are those who died after spending their lives waging war against the nafs. The nafs is really, think of it as a war against your overcoming your disinclination to hate people, overcoming your disinclination to be violent. So this is your overcoming your moral sense. And if you can do that, if you can learn to hate, and they call this the greater jihad, overcoming your moral sense, essentially turning yourself into a little bit of a psychopath, then you're regarded as a martyr. They speak of, even if you die in your own bed, you're a shahid who will be treated as if you had been killed fighting alongside the Prophet in physical jihad, in violent jihad. And so other Imami traditions declare as martyrs those who in their lifetime practiced muddarat, who treated others in a friendly manner while concealing their true attitude towards them. This attitude would be hatred towards non-Muslims. And muddarat, it should be known, is the Sunni version of what is called taqiyya. Sunnis will often claim taqiyya is a strictly Shia practice. Well, the Sunni version of that is called muddarat. Any comment from you, Al-Fadi?
No, not at all. But we have a question about a Shia practice called Harira. First of all, have you been exposed to it in the past? Would you like to
No,
address it?
what is that
answer?
question?
Yeah,
So
I'm not really so sure what the person is talking about, to be honest, and I don't want to act as if I know also the answer.
What is the word? I can always try and look it up, but I have a resource.
Harira, it sounds like it's an Harira. I'm familiar with the Moroccan harira. That's a food you can eat, which is delicious. But
Harira, I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah.
In the Encyclopedia of Islam. Let's have a look and see what it comes up with, if anything. No. Let's see what else, if I find anything.
Yeah, I'm really wondering if the person...
Harira, it's a gruel made from flour, yeah, but let me see if there's anything additional. No.
Mm-hmm.
No. Harir?
No problem. No problem.
No. No, it speaks of silk, where it said that the raiment of the people of paradise will be silk. That is rated. They have... Let me see if I... The purring of a cat, that's the closest I can come to that. No, I've got a database. I have a database of well over 1,500 resources that I've downloaded, handpicked, that I've selected. And I've got software that indexes all of those works. So I've got software that indexes all of those. And I can take a random word and within no time at all, found me 47 documents in under a second with the word harira. Right. Yeah. So for instance, and I don't find anything of real value here. I can try and look and see what the different volumes.
Yeah, the person is saying they're going to try to get clarification about the title or the name, I should say, or the term, and I'll forward it to you, brother, so you can have it.
Yeah, no. Again, this just comes to flour cooked with milk, and so on. Yeah. So if they do have anything more, we can find it. We can look for it, but I'm not seeing anything that. So I routinely update this index, and this allows me to search through a massive volume of data very quickly by doing this. Also, it should be noted, Muslims claim that they follow, that they love Abraham and so on, and that they are also within an Abrahamic religion. But this is not, as we understand it. It should be noted that within the Islamic sources, what is made very clear is that Islam rejects Christianity, Islam rejects Judaism, right? And both of those religions ultimately claim a lineage from Abraham. Right? Now, so Abraham follows Yahweh. And then, of course, you've got the Jews derived from him, and then you've got Christianity, which now breaks off from Judaism. Right. Now, of course, Islam rejects both religions. And if you read the Islamic sources, if you read especially the Sirah, they explain that they rejected the teachings of the Bible. They rejected what the Jews taught, they rejected what the Christians taught, and they looked for the original religion of Abraham. So the religion of Abraham is his religion before he started to worship Yahweh. So this is an Islamic sense, in the true Islamic sense, what Abraham worshipped before he followed Yahweh. That is the religion of Abraham. We know from the Jewish sources and we know from the Bible that Abraham was a pagan. He worshipped stone pillars, he worshipped trees, he worshipped rocks. And according to the Jewish sources, Abraham was a Sabaean. The Sabaeans are a Yemeni group, and their whole religion, Sabaeanism, is the religion of moon worship, which is, in fact, it's identical to the Babylonian religion of moon worship to the moon god Sin, who the Yemenis called Al-Makka. So we know that Abraham was a pagan before converting to Yahwism, if you want to put it that way. And this is when Islam speaks about the religion of Abraham, they are speaking of the religion of Abraham before following Yahweh. Exactly. So this would then be a reversion to paganism.
Yep. That's wonderful. Thank you for stating that. At some point today, if you want to talk also about the blasphemy laws against Muhammad, for instance, to give people a flavor of that.
Yeah. Okay. So we've spoken about Ridda, but yeah, let me do that. That's actually, let me bring this up. Let me go and find that for you, because I just need to get the correct reference up. Okay, so the blasphemy laws, that's going to come up in a second. So of course we can go into the Sharia. You've already seen that Ridda, right, is punishable by death. Now, this unfortunately applies to both Muslims and non-Muslims. The main scholar, now Islam has a variety of scholars, for those who are not aware. There's a hierarchy of scholars. So a Muslim can quote you a scholar till he's blue in the face. That scholar may or may not have any relevance whatsoever, right? He might quote you a book that may or may not be relevant today, but there's a hierarchy of scholars, there's a hierarchy of books. So this one is called, this is by Ibn Taymiyyah, who's a Sheikh al-Islam. He's one of the, let's say 30, let's give it a round number, one of the 30 most influential scholars in Islam to ever live. And above him stand 5 other scholars. We won't go into them now, but those are the founders of the schools of fiqh, and a man called Al-Ghazali. So this is the unsheathed sword against the one who insults the messenger, right? So this is blasphemy. Now, let's have a brief look at what this indicates, what this teaches us. They speak here within the book, and this book is designed to clarify what it means to insult Muhammad. To insult Muhammad means very simply to not believe that Muhammad is perfect. To regard Muhammad as less than perfect is considered blasphemy. It is considered an insult. To not consider Islam perfect is considered a crime. And whoever insults the Prophet, the first issue, whoever insults the Prophet is to be killed, whether they are Muslim or a disbeliever or a non-Muslim. Killing is prescribed, legally prescribed, on the one who insults the Prophet. So in other words, not believing that Muhammad is perfect, not wanting to follow Muhammad, to reject him, is a crime. And it is not permissible to imprison or show favor to him or to ransom him. Now, of course, again, any of these laws can be broken if they see a need. There's a certain level of, shall we say, what's the word, when your ethics are pliable, relativist. You've got this very sort of relativistic morals. Any Muslim or non-Muslim who insults the Prophet is to be killed, and repentance is not sought. So when they have the opportunity, this is what they are to implement. This book concerns the Islamic ruling upon those who insult the final prophet. And let me just continue. This book has more calls to kill than any book I've ever seen in my life. The objective of this work is to clarify the Islamic ruling on the subject, and they are to be killed. Okay, the one who insults the Prophet is to be killed, and you'll just see reference after reference. Okay, they are to be killed. This is the general view of the scholars. They have consensus that whoever insults him is to be killed, and they mention the founders of the school of fiqh and other major scholars, unanimous agreement upon killing, and it's the ruling that whoever insults other than Muhammad is to be lashed. Okay, so fine, and you may be lashed to death. That may happen. Consensus upon the obligation of killing, and of course you've got, and then do not know anyone who differed concerning the obligation of killing. Scholars have consensus that whoever insults the messenger, who attributes a defect to him, such a person is a disbeliever, and those who insult are killed, and so on. And there is no difference of opinion concerning the killing. And it just goes on and on. Such a person is to be killed, necessitates that they be killed. And the one who insults the messenger is to be killed. The text to be killed. And of course, they've got here, and of course, they must be killed. The Imam must kill them. Companions of killing, and they call this the political killing. So, in other words, Islam permits political assassination. Over to you, Al-Fadi.
So, along the same lines, What are the blasphemy laws against Allah?
Not as strict as for Muhammad. I mean, they said they could potentially be killed if it was maybe an egregious situation, very public, but otherwise you're lashed. I mean, they said that's lashed. Muhammad, you get killed, but Allah, you might get a stoning or a beating. Sorry, you get a beating.
Yeah. And I just asked this question because it shows that really Muhammad's status is at some point, sometimes you feel like not only he's equal to Allah, but sometimes he's even above Allah when it comes to that.
That is true. In fact, if you go into the Sharia, Muhammad is in fact the equivalent of Allah. Muhammad speaks with the full authority of Allah. Let's actually go here. I need to find this reference. So 75. So this is actually not loving the Prophet more than all people. In other words, Muhammad is not just a warner. Even though in the Quran he's just a warner, a plain warner, right? According to the Sharia, you must love Muhammad more than all people, more than your family, more than your children, more than your wife, more than your own life and all your possessions, more than your mother, more than your father. So let me go. Let me actually find this. Let me go back because it's very hard to find this particular reference. P75.2. I need to find. Here we go. So this is the section within the Sharia of not loving the Prophet more than all people. And it simply states that none of you believes, none of you is a Muslim until I, who is Muhammad, am more beloved to him than his wife, his child, himself, and they mean life here, your own life, and all people. In other words, you must be willing to die, to kill or be killed in jihad for Muhammad and all people. And love of the Prophet means the will to obey him and never disobey him, this being one of the obligations of Islam. Now, notice this is very, very similar to one of the Christian commissions that you will love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your strength. Whereas you will love the Lord your Muhammad more than your wife, your child, your family, your life, and all other people. So now, effectively, this tells us that Muslims worship Muhammad.
Indeed, indeed. And that's extremely important for people to notice this. Now, somebody mentioned that some of these sayings appears to have been borrowed from the words of Jesus. Jesus is God incarnate. That's a whole different story. And indeed, when Muhammad applies it to himself, whether he heard it from someone, whether he claimed it was about him, he, by his own admission, as a human being, as a slave of Allah, is actually elevating himself to be equal to Allah, which is shirk and idolatry, or even above Allah.
Yeah. And notice Muhammad is the lawgiver. Allah is also the lawgiver. So the lawgiver, just as in the, if you look at the law of Moses, Allah, God or Yahweh is the lawgiver, and Muhammad receives the law. Now, at no point does Moses become the equivalent of Yahweh. Moses is the mouthpiece. Moses is the man who receives the message, who speaks the message. But Moses never becomes the lawgiver equivalent to Allah, to God. Whereas notice within the Islamic term of the lawgiver, this is synonymous with Allah or Muhammad. They are both of equal authority within the Sharia. So this is very, very simple. Muhammad is on an equal plane with Allah. Muhammad's words carry the same weight. So there's a very big difference here.
Yes. Again, I'm sorry. Every now and then I'm diverting a little bit, not by intention, but just when I see something that worth discussing. Yeah. So please continue on with whatever you were sharing with us as examples.
So if there's any questions from the audience with regards to the series, because I'm also looking at the questions. If there's anything from the series that was things that you have questions about, then I can tackle those questions for you.
And I think that's an excellent point, by the way, Lloyd. Maybe next time you and I will do the live stream by just grabbing as many comments as possible from the series, and just the show will be about those.
Yeah. Also want to highlight here, I'll just bring this up. I just had it a moment ago, now I've lost it. But notice that you'll just see it there I just missed it on the slide. Let me see if I can find that. 18, I think it was. Let me just go back so I can try and find that. The screen is all the way. Here we go. So notice that it says here within the Aqidah, within the creed of Islam, that we follow the sunnah of his prophet, we avoid deviation, differences, and divisions. Right? But also, we love the people of justice and trustworthiness. Those are Muslims, and we hate the people of injustice and treachery, which is you as a non-Muslim. You are the people of injustice and treachery, and they are taught to hate. This again goes against the Christian message of to love thy neighbor, but also to love thy enemy. Right? So Islam teaches hatred. And of course, here you can see within this creed, number 75, when our knowledge about something is unclear, we say, Allah knows best. This is an article of faith. So they admit not having answers. And Muslims are supposed to just satisfy themselves with the claim that Allah knows best. So, yeah. Another thing that might be interesting for people to realize is that the basic premise of the Sharia, and it states here, is that what is good in Islam is not from your moral sense, but what is good is what Allah or Muhammad have permitted or asked for, and this is automatically good. Bad is what Muhammad or Allah have indicated is bad by asking for it not to be done. Right? So if they have done something, it is automatically good. So if Muhammad married a 6-year-old, it is good. If Muhammad slept with a child, it is good. So because they have permitted it or they've asked for it to be done. So good is not what reason considers good, nor is bad what reason considers bad. So Islam literally violates reason within the Sharia, not your conscience, not your reason. They state very bluntly that good and bad, according to this school of thought, is the sacred law and not reason. So do not listen to your conscience. You will follow what is right according to what is in the Sharia. This is the final standard, not your conscience, not.
And I want to add a support to what you just said. I don't know if people remember one ISIS jihadi beheaded his own mother, actually.
Wow.
And yeah, and I assure you, part of that was something like this. Your mother did something wrong according to our belief. She violated what the Prophet taught or what the Quran taught. Yes, she is your mother. The idea of honoring your mother is fine, but because she's against ISIS, against what we're doing the prophetic way, she doesn't want you to be a jihadi. Therefore, that's permissible. And he ended up beheading his mother. I have no idea what happened to that person after that, but I'm sure he went crazy, probably.
Fair enough. Let me actually, someone asked about the laws on rape. So let me try and find a section here. If you give me one moment, I just need to go find the reference. For those of you who don't know, this is my website. It's just under my full name, Lloyd de Jongh, and I need to go and find something on my playlist, on my community tab. So, okay, yeah, this is volume 2. And okay, so I'll just play it from, I'll just actually just I'll actually just show the image here in full screen, so that'll be fine with everyone. So someone asked about the laws on rape. Now, understand anything that is embarrassing in Islam. Al-Fadi, you know what would be good is if I highlight something, if you can provide from a Christian perspective what Christians should believe, what Christians should do, at least just a brief overview to say what we believe and why it is better. So we can show, we can contrast that. You know, that I think would help people. So notice someone spoke about rape. Now, understand there's the laws of the 4 witnesses and all of those things, but let's skip over that for now because we tend to get stuck on these points. What you do need to realize, this is from the Ihya Ulum al-Din, the revival of the religious sciences by the supposed greatest scholar in Islam after Muhammad himself. This scholar is above the 4 scholars who founded the schools of fiqh. This is from the Hujjat al-Islam, the proof of Islam. Right, and this is for Yeshua the King. He left a super chat. What's the right? Was it Yeshua? Yes, he did. Laws on rape. Now, notice, keep the secrets of Muslims secret. The Prophet said, if a man keeps the guilt of a Muslim secret, Allah will keep his guilt secret both in this world and the next. The Prophet said, if a believer keeps the fault of his brother secret, he will enter paradise. The Prophet said, had you kept it, so when Ma'az disclosed the condition of his fornication to the Prophet, Muhammad said, had you kept your fornication concealed under your cloth, it would have been better. And then Hazrat Abu Bakr said, if I see a drunkard, I entertain such a hope in my mind that Allah will keep this sin secret. Omar one night went out in the city in disguise and saw a man and a woman in obscene action. In the morning, it told the people, if a certain Amir, which is himself, sees a man and a woman committing fornication, and if he metes out the prescribed punishment in the Quran to them, what is your opinion? And the people said, you are a ruler. You have freedom in this action. But Ali said, this is Muhammad's son and nephew, I believe, punishment, his adopted son, punishment in this case is unlawful. Rather, you are to suffer punishment for this slander. Why? Because it's only one person who is saying so, not four. So therefore it is slander because it embarrasses. And I'll see, slander in Islam is not to lie about someone, it is to tell the truth that is embarrassing. So in Western law, to slander someone is to lie about them and cause them harm. In Islam, to slander is to tell the truth that would harm someone, that would damage them, embarrass them.
Yeah. And
So
this is,
you are to suffer, and this punishment cannot be meted out without the evidence. So notice they are to keep their sins secret. Al-Fadi.
yeah, I was going to say this is the Ali who's the cousin of Muhammad and the fourth caliph, righteous caliph, and he is also the son-in-law of Muhammad
Yes.
as well. So all of these names that you mentioned, Abu Bakr, Omar, Ali, they're big deal. I mean, technically speaking, they are people with high authority.
Yeah. So in other words, we are not to confess our sins in Islam, right? We are to keep them secret. We are to hide them. We are to, and if we hide the sins of both ourselves, and if we hide the sins of fellow Muslims, Allah Himself will turn a blind eye to them, and you will enter paradise despite the sin. This theologically, I mean, this Fadi, what are your thoughts on that? Because I mean, this is basically saying hide it. You know, don't speak to your brother about his sins. Don't ask him to change his ways. This is actually rather sweep it under the rug. So therefore, rape doesn't not happen in Islam, but it happens. But they shouldn't talk about it because it brings shame on the deen, and therefore they should just hide it under the rug.
Yes, we have a question. It's a little bit of a tough question, to be honest. I'm going to highlight it
Mm-hmm.
here. It's talking about the punishment for sleeping with a minor. Obviously, the person is asking about Sharia law ruling for that.
Sleeping with a minor is, we have discussed this in detail. It was a very controversial episode. Unfortunately, it is not something that is considered, it is generally not considered something that is a crime within, from a Western moral perspective and a Western legal perspective. We of course see this as a sin and as a crime. In Islam, it is Tuesday. It is perfectly acceptable. So let me have a look at. Actually, let me just do this. Islam QA plus 2442. Okay, so I'm going here to Islam QA. So we'll start with a major source, right? So this will take a moment to answer, but so this is a fatwa on Islam QA, which supposes, well, which calls itself the biggest Islamic advice site on the internet. This is fatwa number 22442 on acting and the ruling of marrying young girls. And Islam QA receives something like up to 400 million, between 150 and 400 million visits a month. This I saw at one time when I had access to some of the figures for the amount of visits they get. So 400 million visits a month. This is very, very high. So let's have a look at this fatwa. Why Islam allowed to marry children, girls of age below 10, without their permission? Can you justify this ruling of Islamic child marriage? And what they state here is marrying a young girl before she reaches the age of adolescence is permitted in the Sharia. Indeed, it was narrated that there was scholarly consensus on this point. So all of the scholars of Islam agree. Now, the lay Muslim in the comments may not agree, but his scholars do. And those of your women as have passed the age of monthly courses, for them the iddah, now we all know this as Quran 65:4. Here they tell us what Quran 65:4 discusses. A girl who does not have periods because she is young and has not yet reached puberty. This clearly indicates Allah has made this a valid marriage. So this is a prepubescent girl. And notice they say Aisha, the Prophet, married Aisha when she was 6, and he consummated the marriage with her when she was 9. Okay, and then they repeat various of the Sahih Hadith. And they state here, if the husband and the guardian of the girl agree upon something that will not cause harm to the young girl, then that may be done. So they do state it does not mean that it is permissible to have intercourse with her, but if you think she's ready for it, then go for it. Okay, and Abu Ubaid said that once a girl reaches the age of 9, then the marriage may be consummated even without her consent. Great. Okay. But they say there is nothing in the hadith of Aisha to set an age limit or to forbid sex in the case of a girl who is able for it before the age of 9. This is a public hadith. Oh, so this is a public fatwa. Within the Sharia, it explicitly allows it. You are permitted. You marry a girl at 6 months old, she's your wife, you go for it and do what you like. Unfortunately, this is what's in the Sharia. Hopefully that answers the question. I mean, there's a series,
Yes.
there's an episode on this, and you can go. It's pretty gruesome.
Absolutely, absolutely. But thank you for taking time to do this. Two quick questions here about, you said something about you're not supposed to really announce about your sins or reveal your sins. What about forgiveness? Like, is there anything in Sharia you want to share with our viewers concerning forgiveness? Compare, for instance, to what forgiveness is all about in the Bible, technically speaking.
To be honest, that's not a topic that I know much about. If anything, I mean, I can try and look it up, but they speak of Allah forgiving, but then they also speak in the other breath of don't reveal the secrets. You keep it secret, Allah will keep it secret. If you don't talk about it, He won't talk about it. So yeah, I'm not sure what. I mean, I think that that's more of a theological question because I tend to deal with the legal questions, not strictly the theological side of it. So I am probably not the best person to ask about that. I mean, forgiveness clearly appears a lot within this manual at the very least. But actually, so let's have a look and see if there's anything here. Let's look up this term within the. I'm going to look up this term here within my index. So let's have a look in the Brill Encyclopedia. I'm going to see if this comes up with anything worthwhile within the Brill Encyclopedia of the Quran, if it gives us anything in terms of forgiveness that's technical and helpful. So, invocation of God's protection against Satan. Okay, no. Let's have a look at forgiveness. Let me go. Let's look up this in the Brill Encyclopedia of Islam. Let's look up the word forgiveness and see what we find. Okay, so it mentions here Laylat. Okay, so nighttime. Okay, Laylat al-Bara. So the night of quittancy, forgiveness of sins, a religious festival marking the night of Mid-Shaban. So, okay, so obviously then there is this idea of forgiveness. Of course, you can go to the Kaaba and you can kiss two of the corners of the Kaaba, and this will give you forgiveness, which is strange because is able to give, only Allah is able to forgive sins. Yet you've got this rock, in fact, not even the rock itself, a corner of a building, which can give you forgiveness. Now that is really odd because then that rock must be Allah, but I thought Allah doesn't come to earth. So really that leaves a major theological problem within Islam. It also should be mentioned Laylat here would now this is I'm going to have to call this somewhat speculative. It's not because this is just throwing an idea out there without I'm not going to back this up. This is something I've looked at in the past at some length, but I just want to bring it out there. It's just something to consider for future investigation. So, but Laylat would, within the Jewish context, be Lilith. Now, notice they mention here nighttime, night, right? The night of. So, Laylat would, in the Jewish context, be, I believe, Lilith. Lilith was, according to the apocryphal Jewish stories, the first wife of Adam, and she was a demon who ate babies. And she abandoned Adam. She refused to submit to him, and she was chased out of paradise. And eventually, two angels were sent to bring her back. And long story short, she was a very evil being at the end of the day. And for some reason, this idea of the Laylat makes its way into Islam, and it's part of what they call forgiveness, which is really just a bit weird, right?
Absolutely, and the last 10 days of Ramadan, for instance, and the night of power, all of those have something to do with people asking for forgiveness or hoping that their sins are forgiven. Performing the Hajj, the pilgrimage, in a good way that is acceptable to Allah.
Mhm.
Could offer forgiveness to your sins, and the list can go on and on and on. But you're absolutely correct. I mean, it's a strange thing to think about kissing a stone or touching a stone. Somehow your sins will be forgiven. In fact, that's why it's called the black stone, because apparently it used to be whiter than snow. It turned black because of the sin of mankind. I mean, it's kind of like Islam borrows bits and pieces of the gospel and yet it denies the author of salvation, in this case, our Lord, of course.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, so
Now,
so there's a lot of strangeness going on there. Yeah, so I'm not the best person to ask about the idea of forgiveness, but hopefully that gave some sort of idea of that was useful. Um, and
yeah, absolutely. And of course, we're almost getting ready to wrap up this particular live stream. Hopefully, you
Mhm,
and I can have another one pretty soon here to continue with
certainly.
these topics. Everybody's interested, of course. But let me close by asking this question. And this was based on someone's comments here. Let's say under Sharia law, someone was accused of, stealing, and then somehow, let's say, witnesses lied about that, or maybe the evidence led people to believe the authority that he is the thief. They cut his hand, then they discover that it wasn't that person. Are there restitutions based on Sharia for things like this?
Um, yes, there are. Now that's a fairly involved technical legal question, but there will be some form of restitution. Usually, it involves revenge, like the Jewish idea of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. There will usually be some kind of blood penalty. So usually there would be something of that nature. There would be a financial restitution, but there might also be the demand for some kind of physical punishment. What the specific punishment would be, I mean, that would depend on the case and what the judge and the lawyer decide within that, what the lawyer presents and what the judge eventually decides within that. So I can't say for sure, but there is the idea of you're allowed to seek a blood vengeance, and you can have restitution in blood. And of course, one of the things also, hold on, let me actually mention, let me go here. Let me actually go here. Let me actually show this. So here's one example of restitution. Okay, this is one example of restitution, if I may. So this is the term ghura, right? Ghura, you see Ghurra. Now they mention here a term used in Bedouin societies. But this is related to Islam because obviously this is one of the Islamic groups. In Bedouin society, it's a term used for the young girl who must be a virgin. She must be a white girl, and she must be given by the family of a murderer to a member of the injured family as compensation. In turn, the latter forgoes the right of vengeance. So, a family that's been wronged, an Islamic Muslim family that's been wronged under Islamic law, under the Sharia, is allowed vengeance. So, they not just a matter of, let's say, financial compensation, but they're allowed physical retaliation. So, they may kill someone. But for something as heinous as murder, you can give them a white girl, and that will take away. So you can give him a sex slave and say, "Here,
Yeah.
here's a literally a white woman you've captured, and you can have her, and let us go in peace." So
And
yeah,
the
this is very
interesting,
odd. Yeah.
yeah, the interesting thing, Lloyd, is that the word ghura, where you get also the word ighra, or the verb yughri or tughri, meaning to tempt, temptation. It's like
Oh
to tempt
wow.
someone. They share the same root, basically.
Okay, that is really interesting, because also, what is also interesting. Let me do one last thing. So let's go to the word huri. So just one last thing here. So hawra. How do you say this word, Fadi? Hawra.
Yeah, hawra. Yeah.
Hawra. Okay. Hawra, plural, is hur. So hur is plural of hawra, which, according to the Encyclopedia of Islam, means white. Now, they say implied in particular to the very large eye of the gazelle, but also, okay, a woman whose big black eyes are in contrast to their whites. But notice they also mention here to the whiteness of the skin. I think the whiteness of the skin is more visible than the whiteness of the eyes. Okay, the whiteness of the skin. So a huri, white, is a white woman. And notice the plural hur is used in the Quran for the virgins of paradise that are promised to believers. In other words, white women, which is just a very unusual find, a very unusual thing. So this is just something about Islam that the things that one finds. So yeah, I mean that's it for me in terms of this idea of hura and huri. Are the two words related? This hur and hura.
Yeah, yeah. So it's really interesting, as you know, of course. Some even might say that this word hur was borrowed from Syriac or Greco language, and it means really the basically, not necessarily a virgin in heaven, but it can talk about grape or something related to that. So there are, the jury's still out on this, and obviously our Muslim friends are also debating now, based on this new information, whether really it meant this or it meant that. But all that to say is that it's very obvious for us here that there are things that we've just mentioned about the teaching of Islam from Sharia that may come across as a strange thing. And you probably, and I'm talking to our viewers, you may even ask a Muslim person, and they may even flat out tell you that's a lie. Islam doesn't teach things. I mean, how often do you hear that? Have you ever engaged yourself, Lloyd, with any Muslim about these things? You were inquisitive about it, and yet the reaction was Islam doesn't teach it?
All the time. Unfortunately, we didn't go into that, and we won't do so now. But it's very unfortunate that within Islam, one of the prime directives is to keep the peace, to prevent friction, and to do so, it is incumbent upon the Imam to lie to Muslims, and it's incumbent upon Muslims to lie to non-Muslims, because this allows one to not have friction. Right? So unfortunately, I mean, we can go through the Sharia, and I can show you where it states this quite explicitly. So to maintain this facade of purity, of holiness, the imams may lie to their flock, and thus they will lie to him about this. But also, it's very hard to know how much does this Muslim know, and are they simply lying to defend Islam? Because it is also legal to lie to defend Islam, and Allah will reward you for this. So, on the one hand, you've got Muslims who don't know, who were lied to, and they believe they're being sincere, and they aren't aware of the facts of what's in their legal system and in their beliefs above their level. But then also, are they a propagandist, the dawahgandist, who is deliberately lying because this is considered legal, righteous, moral, and earns them reward from Allah? I mean, that's a tough one to answer.
Yeah, you give me an idea, and I'll share it with you about maybe the next live stream we'll do. We'll circle around a concept like this. So again, thank you so much, brother. And please remind everyone about your website or your channel one more time so that they are aware of where to go and find your videos on these topics.
Yeah, so Mariana's been very kindly sharing my channel link in the chat, and it's on just my name, Lloyd de Jongh, right? The double LOYD DEJONGH. And that's where you'll find me. And of course, I've done the series here on your channel as well. And they'll find a lot of information there, and even more on my channel, but far more videos. And yeah, I want to thank you, Al-Fadi. This has been a real honor and a real privilege working with you, and I'm grateful to have the platform to speak about this. And I want to also iterate that we have no hatred towards Muslims. We simply want to speak the truth. We simply
Absolutely.
want to show them this is the fact of what is in your doctrine, and we'd like to show you in a different way, a better way. You've got Christianity, which does not teach this, is not like this, despite what the scholars may have told them. But that's a misrepresentation.
Exactly. And I understand, by the way, that many of the young generation Muslims are really trying to just disavow, many of these teachings. And that's all wonderful. But unfortunately, these are traditional teachings that lasted for centuries. And it's not just up to me, you, or them to somehow cancel it and say it doesn't apply. It doesn't work that way. Things do not work that way. But maybe our young generation Muslims will start a movement and try to reinterpret things. But I'm guessing they'll have a hard time also justifying reinterpretation, since the primary sources support any of these rulings.
Yeah, I mean, just really, if Muslims are willing to take an honest look at their own legal system, at their scholars, the works of their scholars, they will not find this beautiful Sharia that they believe exists. And Islam is not what they think it is. And they really should take an honest read of the New Testament, take an honest read of the Gospels. Just read it and see for yourself the difference.
Amen. And as we started, and we asked about the definition for Sharia. My brother Lloyd here mentioned to you that Sharia means way, or the way, technically speaking, Shira. And I want to close by saying the only way that we have to paradise is our Lord Jesus Christ. He is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except by him, or through him. So that's our invitation to you. If you are distraught, or if you're feeling depressed, or if you're feeling amazed or even embarrassed by what we just shared, we're not here to shame you. Well, that's not our intent at all. We're here to educate you and enlighten you about things. I'm speaking to you as a Muslim person who's watching. Please consider the alternative, and that's our Lord Jesus Christ. Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our amazing moderators. And I promise you, we will have another live stream, and not just one more, but we will continue to have these live streams with Lloyd. I enjoyed this setting today. I enjoyed the format. I enjoy the fact that people are really asking the right questions.
Yeah.
And what I want to encourage everyone who is watching now or will be watching this particular live stream later, please put questions for us in the comments. We will take those questions and we'll make a whole live stream just to address questions.
Thank you. Yeah. So guys, yeah, please ask your questions so that we can prepare them for next time. We'd love to know what you are curious about. And thank you again, Al-Fadi. I mean, I think the audience response has been fantastic. The audience is really, there's lots of positive comments here. And I think this is a really, really great
Wonderful.
session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to you, brother. And we appreciate you and appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you, everyone. This is Al-Fadi, over and out. God bless. Take care.